Good evening, everyone. This is the I Hate Football podcast. I am your boy Q, and tonight bringing you a start of the series that I wanted to get started with. Man, really touch on the really just the state of the University of Miami football program. Man, following a really good season in 2025. That just ended, and already back to uh, to spring workouts and everything like that. But really just kind of touch on the season that was, the good and the not so good. This is a looking like a four-part series that I wanted to start tonight. And joining me tonight is a good friend of mine, buddy of mine that I've known for over 30 years. And if you follow my content, and if you follow his, you've definitely seen me on his podcast. He's been on mine on many occasions. Going back now, the host of the 305 Sports Now podcast, my boy Will. What is up, buddy?
Nothing much, man. Glad to be on, bro. Glad to be on. I'm always
Look,
happy to be
look,
on the show, chopping it up.
looking comfortable over there in the looking comfortable over there in bed. A little under the weather, playing hurt, but
Yeah.
playing nonetheless, man. Glad to have you on. Our boy Adrian from the Rainy Day Pod was supposed to be on. Also, we got a little family emergency he's tending to.
Mhm.
Nothing serious, but if he gets finished up, then he'll jump on with us here later on. But good to have you, brother. How's everything?
Good, man. Good. Like you said, I told you before the show started that I didn't realize what time it was because I'm recovering from like a fever. So, so I'm glad to be on, man. Especially when it comes to the state of the Canes, and the series that you're putting together.
Yeah, man. Like I was telling the people, and I told you guys earlier, man. It was kind of something that came to mind. With everything going on, with them and the type of season they had. I thought it was a good time to kind of revisit the 25 season. Even though it just ended, right? Seemingly football season, unfortunately, done for the better part of 7-ish months. Even though they'll give us some stuff to talk about and everything like that, and especially the NFL with the way they set up their calendars and everything. But with the season over with, man, and just a little time to reflect now, I wanted to touch on really the 25 season, and like I mentioned earlier, man, what went right, what went wrong, and not so much, not a lot went wrong, man, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
I think it's a season, that as a longtime Canes fan, I think for the both of us, right, and for everybody that's been associated with this program and following them for obviously as long as we have, and if you've been a fan for any extended period of time, I mean, that this was success unlike we've seen in a really long time, right? When you take everything into consideration, the way they stormed back at the end of the season after losing
Mhm.
2 out of 3 games, and really just the adjustments that were made, and everything that happened, man. Really just looking back, at the end of the season, man, you have to look back with really with pride, right? You got to be proud of what this team did, the way they rallied. I think after the those 2 losses in 3 weeks, and a lot of doubt coming their way, and really just Mario taking the heat, and oh, same old Canes and this and that, and the way they rallied, man, I think was something to be proud of, and to admire.
Yeah, I mean, I was very happy with the end results of the season. Obviously, slightly disappointed. You're disappointed because like you're one drive away from winning the whole thing, and it come to fruition. But if you would have told me that we'd be in the national championship game at the start of the season, I would say I'll take it. I'll take it. Everyone there was doubts whether we should even be in because of the 2 losses to SMU and Louisville. But the bottom line is though is that this team adjusted very well. They started using more plays to run outside. The injection of Gerard Pringle into the offense made things a lot better. The defense got better as the season prolonged itself and so on. So yeah, I mean, there's not much to complain about. I'm actually very excited about. It actually makes me very excited for next season. I think next season the Canes are in good shape to once again make a repeat appearance for the national championship. Mario proved a lot of people wrong. You can't win big games. Check, he did that. The Canes will never get to a national championship with Mario Cristobal. Check, he did that. So. I mean, I think the narrative of Mario, I think, should kind of be a lot more silenced, especially this past season, because the fact of the matter is you didn't have the offense you had the season prior with Cam Ward, but yet it was sufficient enough that it got you to a national championship. And I think that's something that needs to be said.
Yeah, it's wild, man. You look back on the season that was, and I think anybody who knows me, and knows what we do here and everything, I'm not a fan of I'm not a fan of the hypotheticals, right?
No, neither am I.
But it's crazy when you sit there and think of, man, what if Cam Ward had this defense, right? If Cam Ward would have had this defense, what might have been, what could have been.
Yeah.
But listen, man, again, like you mentioned, and something I plan to talk about as the show went on, and we touched on Mario was exactly that, right? Was a lot of these narratives and that people and some of them lazy in my opinion, some of them slightly warranted, I guess, but some of these narratives of what Mario, wasn't, what he couldn't do, what he'd never do in the whole deal, and you touched on a couple of those, and we'll go in depth more, into them as the show goes along. But the more so those mindsets and those narratives that kind of, I feel like, creeped in again, like you mentioned, right? After that loss to Louisville, right? And it was interesting to me to hear throughout the season, as the season went along, and people quantifying these losses as like bad losses, right? Again, are they games they should have lost? Absolutely not. I'm not going to say they were better than SMU. They were better than Louisville. You can make an argument that essentially, they were within 2 plays of being undefeated for the season, right? Because the SMU loss, right? If Marquise Lightfoot doesn't get flagged for that, that play at the end where he roughs the passer, he didn't hear the whistle going off. To me, I think it was a BS roughing the passer. Yeah. But again, you can make a strong argument that if that flag doesn't get thrown, they win that game, right? When you talk about the Louisville game, they were driving to be able to, to, I believe, kick a field goal, to tie that game, possibly, extend it or whatever. So, you're looking at, 2 plays and they're undefeated, for the season. Again, you can make an argument, right? And so, nonetheless, they lose that game to Louisville, which again was not a bad loss when you look at this Louisville team. At the time that happened, and I remember, and I wrote it down here, was like they had the 3rd highest. They were the 3rd highest rated defensive line at the time that they beat Miami, behind Texas Tech and Miami, and they had the 2nd highest pressure rate. At the time when they beat Miami. So this narrative, that they, oh my God, Louisville was a terrible loss. No, it wasn't a terrible loss. Should they have lost? They shouldn't have lost. But this narrative that it was a terrible loss, really kind of, it took it like it gathered steam, and just, people just kind of kept referencing to this thing as like a bad loss. And again, I didn't see it, but then again, after that loss, they really they turned things around, right? I mean, the offense found itself, like you mentioned, they injected Gerard Pringle, and just gave the offense like, this life that I think it was sort of missing, right? I think they were, shopping in the A gap, right, all the time, right? Just living in that A gap. They inject Gerard Pringle. Now this running game kind of has a little bit more life to it. That helps out the passing game. They start, they're beating the hell out of everybody, so on and so forth, and just really turn things around and just went on a tear, right? They go on the tear. They end the season, and as we know, they make the playoff and do what they did. But, this is, that's a loss that in previous years, right? We talk so much about, Mario's record in November, Mario's record in December, what's going to happen when, if they lose a game, it's going to spiral, but it didn't, right? It was the total opposite, right? They lost that game and they came together, figured things out, were able to remedy some things, and literally the season got turned around at the exact time they needed it to, and really finish the season strong. So, again, just like you mentioned, these narratives that I think Mario, dispelled this year, and I think, one of them was not being able to adjust, right? Being so rigid, in his mindset and in his system. There, it's like, no, it's gonna be this way. Come hell or high water, this is what we're gonna do. And they were able to switch things around after that loss to Louisville, and and really look like just a completely different football team.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. You saw the adjustment. I think after the SMU game, I think that the talk in camp. Well, not I'm sorry, I'm a little tired here.
No,
But
you're good.
the conversation was, about making the offense more creative, and I believe the phrase they used was "let it rip," and that's exactly what they did. They let it rip a little bit more. We saw the injection of Malachi Tony into the offense with trick plays, and you had to count for him because he knows how to throw the balls. And that's just some running back that doesn't know how to toss a pass. He could throw the needle, and that's what I think made his team very special and made his team unique and made his team very formidable as well. And the fact of the matter is, like, everyone, like, in the national media would say that Mario just doesn't adjust, he doesn't play fast and whatever, but that was taken out because there were times where they did use some tempo in the game and played a little quicker as well, and would use big plays to pretty much achieve what they needed to achieve as well. So like I said, man, the whole thing about him not, this and that, and Mario can't win big games, that's all gone now. The Canes will be very formidable again. And the defense as well. The defense got much better as the season progressed. We were ball hawking more with Jacoby Thomas and Keontae Scott. The quarterback pressures really ensued. It wasn't more the Ruben Bain factor, but we saw the ascension also of Akeem Mesidor the second half of the season as he was really getting to the quarterback a lot quicker with ease because they were double teaming Ruben and taking him out of the situation. So yeah, like I said, man, this is like the trajectory for this team is incredibly high, and it's moving forward at a rapid rate. And again, I'm excited for it. As well, I'm glad that we have continuity because we lost some coaches on the offensive side of the ball, but we still have our two coordinators, and I think that's going to do good diligence for next season.
Yeah, man, and you bringing up all that, kind of leads me to really the majority of what I wanted part one to be like was, really, talking about Mario and the job that he did this year, man. I mean, listen, what people were saying about him, previously, right? There's been a lot of stuff nationally, right? Especially nationally, right? And I get it, locally, right? When you're talking about, whether it's the content creators in Miami, whether it's just the local media in Miami, obviously, some stuff that that maybe wasn't all the way positive, all the way favorable, but across the country, some of these narratives that Mario had to dispel this year, right? I mean, you start from the beginning, man. Listen, this is a guy, who didn't have to leave Oregon when he did,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you start there, right? And that's kind of one of the things that I really admired about his coming to Miami, right? He comes over in 2021, coming off a stretch at Oregon where listen, the guy was as successful as you could be, coming off that stretch at Oregon, right? I mean, a guy who had won, he had won a couple of Pac-12 titles, won a couple of Rose Bowls. He was coach of the year in 2019. Like, this is a guy, who didn't have to leave Oregon, right? I mean, he wasn't now. Granted, at the time, he wasn't making necessarily great money. I think when he left, he was only making about $4.5 million a year. Which clearly, if he would have stayed, that at this point, in the game, I mean, he'd be well into the double digits. I would guess, being at Oregon. But again, a guy who left by, I think if we're being honest, it was a better situation at Oregon, right? Given given where he was, given really kind of like the lack of pressure, I would say, right? Yeah, I mean, did you want him? Yeah, you wanted him to win at Oregon if you're an Oregon fan, but there wasn't the pressure to win at Oregon, that there was or is in Miami, right? So you look at, again, a successful stretch where he didn't get fired, right? Oregon wanted him to stay. Phil Knight wanted him to stay, was going to give him a huge bump in money to stay. And he comes to Miami where, listen, how it goes with this fan base. Like, this is not a forgiving fan base, right? And so, coming, you see what he's taken over, for Manny Diaz, even though Manny Diaz wasn't necessarily terrible in his 3-year stretch in Miami, I think he was 21-15, if I'm not mistaken. But obviously underwhelming, right? I mean, this is a program who demands better than 8 wins, right? I mean, this is not a program where you get 8 wins and people are celebrating. Like this isn't the program, right? And so, he coming in, he came in with pressure. He accepted that pressure, right? Given the length of his contract, the money, that was given to him in taking that contract, and coming into a situation where, again, obviously, when he came in, they hadn't won a title, in almost 20 years. And the program wasn't necessarily in a great place, right? And so, you come in to do damage control from the word go. And I was one of those people that kind of thought, listen, I don't know that we're that far away roster wise. I don't think we're that far away. Well, we were far away, right? We were far away, and especially when you're looking at, as it relates to the line of scrimmage, right? Because I went back and looked at that roster from 21 when he first got there, and I mean, there's talent. I wouldn't say it was a team that didn't have any talent. The thing was that they were lacking talent on the offensive line and on the defensive line. Because if you looked at like running back, receiver, tight end, safety, corner, I mean, there was talent. They weren't devoid of talent. They weren't terrible, but they did not have the talent needed on the line of scrimmage to win, and to win at a rate that needed to happen at Miami.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, like Jacoby George, and so was a Manny Diaz recruit, and he did well his final year with Miami as well. Elijah Arroyo was a Manny Diaz recruit, and he's he's in the NFL right now. So it wasn't like they were bad. The skill position players were not the issue. The issue was the offensive line. The offensive line was built more on a finesse type of style than it was on a physical type of style. And physicality wins football games. Doesn't matter if it's college football, high school, the NFL. Our offensive line was just not physical. Did we have good running backs? Yeah, Jalen Knighton was a good back. Rashard Smith ended up doing really well, at SMU and in the NFL, but we weren't physical, and we saw what being physical could do in the playoffs. In the playoffs, listen, throughout the season, it doesn't matter in any sport, you can play a certain way, but the playoffs are a totally different ball game. It doesn't matter if it's hockey, it doesn't matter if it's basketball, it doesn't matter if it's the NFL. Because now you're facing the best of the best, and things tend to happen. So defenses tend to tighten, and offenses tend to score less. And that's what we saw in the playoffs this season. And Miami showed that with physicality. At the end of the day, it's all about the line of scrimmage. If your front four and your front five can be dominant, the sky's the limit for both sides of the football, and that's exactly what Miami had. Miami had the best offensive line and the best defensive line against every single opponent they faced, and it showed. It showed even in the national championship game, as well, that Miami had the better offensive line and defensive line, the way they pressured Mendoza, the way they were able to, in the second half especially, to open up the running lanes, and Fletcher had that great run. So the bottom line is that to win in football, you need to have a good offensive line and a good defensive line, and Miami lacked that under the Manny Diaz era. It was okay in the Richt era, but we saw some issues with I would say with some play calling. With Rick, I thought it was too archaic. The way he called the plays and stuff like that. But the bottom line, though, is that the line of scrimmage is still key. Doesn't matter how much the sport evolves. Doesn't matter how pass happy it gets. If you have to have a good front five and a solid front four, and it can take you far places.
Yeah, man, it's crazy because I was listening to I can't remember who it was the other day. I can't remember if it was the guy from Kane's Inside or if it was somebody else. But they were talking about the line of scrimmage from that roster, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm scrolling right through the school's website, and you're looking at some of these names, on for example on the line of scrimmage, right? And it's crazy when you sit there and you look at where we're at now, right? What we average, right? And then you look at, you go back and look at, Lawrence Seymour, right? Big baby.
Yeah, think about him.
6'2", 315. 6'2", 315. DJ Skate, 6'3", 306. Cleveland Reed, 6'3", 320, right? So I mean, not a small dude necessarily. Ja'Kai Clark, you remember him, the little dancing fool on the sideline, 6'3", 305. And I think that's probably, they were being generous. I'd venture to guess he was probably closer to like 295.
Yeah. I met him in person. He wasn't that large.
That guy was not over 300 pounds.
No, he wasn't.
I remember seeing that guy. I remember seeing that guy once or twice. He was not over 300 pounds. Isaiah Walker, right? 6'5", 280. Navon Donaldson was a big dude, 6'6", 350. But you're looking around, man, and Zion Nelson was there, obviously 6'5", 316. You hate that he got injured, right? Jared Williams, 6'6", 310. Jalen Rivers obviously was a big dude. Corey Gaynor, center. He didn't have to be huge, 6'4", 300 pounds. Usman Traore, 6'3", 310. So on and so forth, right? You're looking at some of these names. Justice Oluwoshun, 6'3", 325. That's shocking to me. I don't think that guy was ever 325 pounds. Chris Washington, all right, 6'7", 290. John Campbell, 6'5", 315. So, I mean, again, you had some guys, right? Michael McLaughlin, 6'7", 300 pounds. But, again, where you were really lacking, size, again, on the line of scrimmages, and you had guys like Chance Williams on the D line, right? 6'3", 250 or something like that, right? Not big dudes and stuff. And so, obviously a completely different, mentality, a completely different, look and makeup of the roster, right? When you look at the offensive line, I think we were averaging, 6'5", 330 or 340 or something like that on the offensive line, kind of something along those lines. And obviously on the D line, big physical tone setters on the defensive line, right? And so, that's a thing, man. He comes in, and not only does he talk about being more of an SEC looking team, right, but goes out and accomplishes that, right, based on the way he recruits, based on who he brings in, to coach the defense. And obviously, early on, his first, coaching staff on paper looked great.
Yeah.
Right. On paper, you're right. They were calling these guys the Avengers. I don't know if you remember that. Like, when you put them like Kevin Steele, right. Charlie on defense, right? Kevin Steele, Charlie Strong at linebacker, so on and so forth, right? Jamil Adai, at DB, right? So, all these guys that that he brought in, you're like, oh wow, okay, on paper, looking really good, but obviously, that didn't work out, right? And so, you're looking at a guy, who has had some missteps, right? Obviously, the Josh Gaddis debacle, being maybe the worst one of all, and but a guy who pivoted and righted that wrong, right? Didn't sit around, like Al Golden with Mark D'Onofrio never making a change, right? I mean, no, I'm sorry if I caused you some nausea, mentioning those two names right there, but again, I mentioned it, to say that, he identified a misstep, identified that he had the wrong guy, and went and made a change, right? And so, again, some of the things you really have to give him credit for, right? When he gets here, again, if we start at the beginning, when he gets here, you're selling vision, right? When you first get here, right? You're selling vision, right? And then you come in, and what do you do right out of the gate? 5 wins, 5 wins, and everybody's going, wow, 5 wins. This is what we're doing, right? And he told everybody, listen, we this notion that we were close was a farce. This notion of us being, close to turning the corner is false. It's not true, right? Yeah. And so, you come into year 2, 7 wins, not good enough, right? And then what happens in year 3, right? Boom, 10 wins, right? Obviously, defense lacking the whole deal. But now you go from selling vision, right, to selling proof, right, to selling results, right? And this is now what we're starting to see, right? And so, it's evident in the way that we're recruiting, right? This notion, again, it's always mind-boggling to me when you listen to the national media and these narratives that they heap on Miami, right? And it's like, oh well, they're only doing it because of NIL. Listen, Mario Cristobal was the National Recruiter of the Year in 2015 at Alabama. Like, this notion that Mario needed NIL to recruit is the biggest crock of garbage, just to avoid cussing. It's nonsense. Like, it's ridiculous. This guy has always been able to recruit. Back in his days at FIU, and what he did there, right? And so, again, when he was at when he was at Rutgers, when he was at, Alabama, when he was at Oregon, now he's at Miami. Like, he's been able to recruit, this entire time. NIL just enhanced it, but he's always been a recruiter, right? But now we're going from selling vision, just recruiting, being okay at doing that. But we're kind of turning the corner now into playing in the national title. You've gone from selling vision to selling results. The three things now that you're looking at coaches happen to be really good at to succeed. You're looking at, you have to recruit, you have to develop, and now you've added the third one because of the portal is you have to retain your players, right? It's retention, right? So it's recruiting, development, and retention. And listen, right now, as it stands now on February 11, 2026, there's not many people doing it better than the head coach of the University of Miami.
Yeah. Listen, I don't want to hear about NIL anymore, because the same people that complain about Miami NIL, their schools pay more in NIL than Miami does. And I'm calling you out Ohio State. I'm calling you out Texas. I'm calling you out Texas Tech as
Oregon.
well. A&M. All right, so cut the crap with the whole NIL thing. We're a small school with 20,000 students. You guys are a school with like 80,000 kids. So to cut the crap. All right, everybody's doing NIL. And as a matter of fact, no one's even hiding anymore. So before, like, I'll never forget the Jeremiah Smith comment when they were teetering on rumors that he was going to flip to Miami. These idiots from the 247 podcast, which is a national podcast, similar to Locked On Kane, said, well, if he goes to Miami because his mom needs money. I will never forget that comment. Never forget that comment. And I'm like, dude, and then you look at all the numbers. Ohio State pays more NIL than Miami does. So the heck with that. And look at this as well. Well, Tech was paying $30 million, in NIL money, whatever it was in the transfer portal, whatever they did. Miami balanced it out with transfer portal and recruiting. Ruben Bain, we just mentioned him. All right, homegrown recruit. Marquise Lightfoot, homegrown recruit. Okay, Mesidor. Okay, fine. He's a Kane. Let's just be honest. The guy was here for 3 years as well. Before NIL was explosive, he agreed to come here as well. Okay, and Anez Cooper, homegrown recruit. Miami's doing it with development and NIL, right, as well. Look, it's the name of the game. You have to, you have to sell. I mean, NIL's name and light is the thing. Let's say, but Mario is still a very elite recruiter, and he proved it this past cycle as well with having another top 10 class. So forget about it. Like, Mario Cristobal is the best recruiting head coach in the country right now, because Miami's at a position right now that, like UQ said, that they're going to pick and choose. By next year, on February 11th, I'm telling you, this very day, Miami Hurricanes are going to pick and choose their players right now. It's not going to be hardcore recruiting, because Miami's going to be, once again, the brand everybody wants to play for. Okay, and Mario's very good at retaining his players, right, as well. I mean, a lot of guys that hit the portal this year, in general, they were guys that weren't getting any opportunity because of stacked rosters, whether it's Tommy Kinzer, Ray Joseph, Bopo, and stuff like that. They wanted starts, and that's perfectly fine. They gave the school 3 years. So that goes to show you how much Miami does take time on its players. That they could have dipped after 1 year and been like, hey, I'm not being used right. But no, they stayed and trusted the process. They didn't feel it was a good fit for them. It's their senior year. They wanted to go get some game tape, and that's exactly what they did. But the bottom line is that recruiting, development, and retention, Miami's got that. And with Coach Cristobal, they're going to continue to have that.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. You hit it on the head. And listen, everybody around the country always raves about their culture, right?
Yeah.
Culture is one of those words that is, in my mind, I think it's slightly played out, but we also know that to win in football, especially in football, right? You'll hear stories of, like, basketball teams, right? That discord, fighting, people didn't like each other, whatever. And they still win. That doesn't happen in football, right? When you talk about, like, the ultimate team sport, it is your best teams not only have skill, talent, right, size, speed, good coaching, all those things, but your best teams like each other.
Yeah.
Right? They like each other. And when you hear everything going on in Coral Gables, it starts there. It starts with people liking each other, people getting along, like a tight-knit group, and all that stems from the culture that Coach Cristobal has established in Miami. You look at who he's brought in, right? You look at the type of the type of players he's brought in. You look at the type of coaches he's brought in, and there is this synergy now that exists, right? When you're looking at, how you're looking at a guy like Jason Taylor, his bond with Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, right? You listen to the way that Will Harris, Zach Etheridge, the way their guys, talk about them, the way people talk about Corey Heatherman. You hear the way the admiration people address Coach Mirabal with. Like when people talk about Coach Mirabal, they literally talk about him as a second father.
Yeah.
Right. The way he treats them. Right. Like he teaches hard, but he loves hard. Right. Like he's a guy who cares about his guys. Mario Cristobal, a guy who cares about his guys. Kevin Beard cares about his guys. Right. You hate that a guy like Matt Merritt left, and congratulations to him. Right. Taking the running back position with the Arizona Cardinals. A guy whose running back room liked him, right? Took to him, cared for him, and he cared for them, right? And so you look at that man just across the board, and culture at times is played out, but for a fact that if you don't have it, you don't win. You do not win if you don't have culture, right? And where we've come now with the University of Miami is that this culture that they've established now, you really see it, when you're talking recruitment, development, retention, retention has to do, in my opinion, it's in direct correlation with that culture, right? Because if it wasn't and people weren't happy, you'd be losing a ton of people. When you look at that running back room, there's no reason realistically that they should have been able to keep that room intact. Mark Fletcher, by all accounts, should be getting ready for the NFL draft.
Yeah.
Gerard Pringle had offers, of course, I'm sure they were all legal. Nobody was tampering because, as we know, only Miami tampers. But Gerard Pringle, I'm sure everything was done, on the up and up because, again, only Miami tampers. But all the reports were out there that Gerard Pringle had multiple offers from the SEC, right? Those schools, it's up to everybody to determine how true it is or not. But we heard all the same programs. We heard Alabama, right? We heard Georgia. Those are kind of the two that were being mentioned when it came to Gerard Pringle. When you look at a room like the cornerback room, listen, you talk about a room that I'm really excited about, and we'll touch on that in the next couple episodes. But a room with as many highly recruited dudes as the cornerback room has, there's no reason why they should have been able to keep all those guys. Do a quick dive into those names in the cornerback room, and you'll see that there is a ton of talent, guys that have not played. You talk about, again, Jabari Antoine, saw a little bit of the field this year, kind of towards the end of the season. But, your Chris Ewalds and all these guys, these guys coming in now with your Brody Jennings and you're going to have Ethan O'Connor come back, Damari Brown come back, Xavier Lucas come back. Like, if you're these underclassmen, you could have easily looked at those guys and gone, why am I going to come back? Why am I going to come back? I'm going to be the sixth corner, on the scene for what? I'm going to go somewhere else and play, right? And so you're looking at these position rooms and stuff, and again, that you can't explain it any other way, right? And then to me, it's even more impressive when you look at a team like Florida State. Hey, Mike Norvell is in year 7. Had the largest turnover of a roster that he's had since his time in Tallahassee. And he's in year 7, right? So, you sit there and you look at what's going on in some of these other programs and the way they're hemorrhaging people, like literally hemorrhaging players. And then you look at Miami and, Miami brought in, I think, 12 people in the transfer portal.
That's it, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. And they're one of, because I have it up here, only 6 teams brought in top 15 transfer classes and top 15 recruiting classes. Miami was one of them. The other 5 are Notre Dame, LSU, Texas A&M, and somehow Florida did, which kind of impressive considering, like, I'm genuinely, like, shocked by that, to be totally honest with you. But Notre Dame, LSU, Texas A&M, Florida, along with Miami, 6 teams who had top 15 recruiting classes, top 15 portal classes. And they were the highest ranked with the smallest class Miami was. Yeah. So when you're looking at what LSU brought in, they had like 30 plus, people in the portal. You're looking at Texas. Texas lost a ton in the portal, but they also brought in a lot of people in the portal. Florida, kind of the same thing. So, again, you're looking at the numbers that they have actually leaving the program, and listen, you're looking at guys who, and I always judge it by, okay, are you losing production or are you losing potential? When people are leaving, when people are exiting your program, what are you losing, right? Potential or production? And really, with Miami, by and large, you're losing really potential. There was nobody outside of maybe Popo Aguirre that left. There wasn't anybody that entered that you're really looking at and going, oh man, they contributed. Fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at JoJo Trader, who that's a shame, right? It sucks because you're looking at what he was as a high school senior when he committed to Miami. Obviously, there was I think at least one service that had him as a 5-star, right?
Yeah.
A kid who obviously is talented, lined up on the other side of Jeremiah Smith in high school. Dude can play. Didn't work out for him for whatever reason. That's a debate for another show. But you're looking at, the guys that left, right? Your JoJo Traders, your Nike Cars, the guys that left by and large are guys who, listen, man, you wish them well, right? Talented guys, but just couldn't find the field at Miami for one reason or another. Injury, so on and so forth. Listen, man, good luck to you. Have fun at NC State, which it looks like damn near everybody went to NC State, right? And so you're looking at what it is you brought in, right? And this is as selective as they've ever been in terms of the portal, right? Where when Mario first got there, you're essentially just you're looking for bodies. You're looking for people to just come in and fill spots. Well, we've gotten now to the point where you're looking at what it is they're bringing in, and they're being selective. Why? Because the roster is in a really good place, right?
Yeah.
What did they go for on the offensive line? They went for a guy like Jordan Seaton. They went for I can't remember now. The name escapes me, but it was an offensive lineman from Texas who ended up going to, I think he signed with Alabama. So I say that to say the guys who they make exceptions for were the top of the market guys, really talented dudes, guys who were difference makers. But they went for some of those guys, didn't land them. Apparently, LSU gave Jordan Seaton an obscene amount of money. The reports are out there. I mean, it's just insane amount of money for an offensive lineman. But Miami was at a number they felt comfortable with. LSU went way over that, and they bowed out of the chase. But that tells you that what they are is happy with that particular room, right? And so we've gotten to a point now with this roster that it's when they're going after people, it's intentional, right? It's not just we're taking everybody, right? It's certain guys at certain positions who are difference makers. And if they don't land those guys, they're going to go with what they have in the room, because they know what they have in the room are talented guys that they're comfortable with. So it's great to see the roster be in this particular spot where they're at now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And the position of the team is pretty much, I think it's that. Bringing in 12 guys when before you were getting more transfer portal guys is also a great feat. It's good that Miami is a top 5 portal class when they only picked up 12 players. It shows you the proportion of how they've been picked up other players as well. Jordan Seaton, I'm okay with it. I mean, let him have fun over there with Lane Kiffin over there. I don't think he's done a good job of really developing offensive linemen, but whatever, it is what it is. Jamal Merriweather, I think, is going to fit in very well with this roster, right, as well. So yeah, I mean, like I said, the roster right Miami, year 4 of Mario Cristobal, the roster is in such a good place that now you just pick and choose your transfer portal guys. You don't have to beg people to come here anymore. And I think that just says a lot about the recruiting, the retention and development that this pretty much this coaching staff has done for the school, right, as well. So I'm totally happy. And yeah, I mean, I'm surprised they kept the entire running back room intact. I understood why Pringle was upset. I didn't quite agree with it, because we all know the term is you ride the hot hand, and the hot hand was Mark Fletcher mauling everybody. I'm glad they were able to work it out, because I think he's an integral part of the offense, a good change of pace back, as well. But the bottom line is, I'm very happy that we're able to keep our running back room intact. I think this upcoming season you might see much more of a rotation because I do expect us to blow out teams more this year than we did last year, based upon the fact the way the offense is being constructed to be more explosive, especially in the transfer portal pick of Andreas Jones. So that's something I'm looking forward to seeing, right, as well. So again, I'm excited. The state of the Canes is in good shape. I really do hope that we start creative and not be in a position where we have to be creative on offense, especially next year. Sorry, next year.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Again, you talk about these notions, right? That Mario had to dispel. The notion of again not being able to adjust, not being able to switch it up, right? When you saw what was lacking on offense, what happened? They switched it up, right? And obviously credit goes to obviously Shannon Dawson, right? Obviously it's his offense. He changed things up and implemented some things, right? Some some gadgets and some stuff, and maybe at times, who knows, man? The fans were complaining at times of some stuff maybe getting too cute and the whole deal. But listen, man, in today's game and in today's college football, right, you got to do some stuff to switch it up, man. That stuff keeps players engaged, right? It keeps things fun, it keeps things light, right? And aside from that, again, I think it's a necessary part of the offense nowadays, right? Again, I think there are things that when you call them at the right time and in the right part of the field, I think there are things that can go for big plays and turn momentum around for you, which we know in football is a big thing. Momentum is a real thing, in football, and those are plays that when they hit, they change momentum, right? And you have to give these defenses, something to keep them honest, right? If it's a defense that's attacking and they've kind of got you in a chokehold, man. Listen, you pull out one of those trick plays, you switch the field or you flip the field, and you've got a different drive, which gives you a different game and changes momentum. So, again, man, hats off to Shannon Dawson for the adjustments that he made. Hats off to Mario Cristobal for allowing him to make those changes, because again, man, too often we had heard, these narratives, right, with him, oh, he won't allow his offensive coordinator to blah, 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 right? Fill in the blank, whatever that may be, right? Now you look at, the next narrative, that I have on the list, and this narrative of a QB killer, right? And that was one of those where we're like, where is this coming from? And again, man, just one more lazy take when it came to Mario, right? This notion of being a QB killer. Well, listen, don't look now, but he's about, Carson Beck is about to get drafted, right? He's not going to be a first round pick more than likely, but he's a guy who's going to get drafted after having Cam Ward go number 1 overall last year, right? And so, again, you talk about development, and it's not only offensive linemen, right? It's not only running backs. You look at, a guy like, like Cam Ward, who, again, everybody knows the story, right? Was projected as a day 3 pick. He had declared for the draft, pulls out, from the draft, comes to Miami, develops and becomes the first pick overall, right? And so, again, development, right? When you're looking at what it is you have, across this roster, the development is evident. You're going to have, a safe bet this year is 3 first-round picks. I saw a mock the other day, and I can't remember who put it out, but they had Keontae Scott as a first-round pick, which I was like, wow, that's crazy. But this year you're going to have 3 first-round picks. You're going to have, obviously, Ruben Bain. You're going to have Francis Manoa, and you're going to have Akeem Mesidor.
Yeah.
That's not development, right? And so again, man, that's where we're at. With a guy like Mario Cristobal, right? We've dispelled notions of not being able to win the big game, right? You start there, right? They went on the road and won all these playoff games, right? They had never. Well, what are you going to say now, right? They went on the road, hostile environment. They'll never be able to. Well, you know what? They went to Texas A&M and shut those weirdos up, right? They beat them, right? They beat Ohio State, on a neutral field. They beat Ole Miss on a neutral field. They come home, and they were within, a couple of special teams plays, away from winning a national title, right? And so, again, man, not being able to win the big game, I should say, right? That's gone out the window. Clock management, that's gone out the window. Quarterback killer, gone out the window, right? Carson Beck elevated his stock now, coming to Miami. playing for the Canes, right? This guy I think was third or fourth in the country, in passing yards, right? And so, oh my God, a Mario offense can't. Oh well, you know what? Here we go, a top 5, guy in passing yards in the country, right? And
he was top 3 also in percentage as well.
If I'm not mistaken, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was top 3 as well in quarter and completion percentage. So yeah, not too shabby.
So again, if all these things that were said about him, man, and now we're looking at what it is he's doing. Meanwhile, Dabo has 5 top 50 players, in the draft, and he wins 7 games. Like what are we doing, man? Again, I think it's really time to start turning the page. On Mario Cristobal, let's turn it to a different sheet of music and start singing a different tune, because again, these notions I think have been dispelled, and we're dealing with a guy who needs to start being recognized with the best coaches in the country.
Yeah, the quarterback narrative, I never believed it because Justin Herbert was a top 10 pick, and then Cam Moore was the first pick. So I never believed it. Listen, man, Mario likes physical football, and I hate to say it, and I know some people won't like it, but that's the kind of football that prepares you for the NFL. All right, the NFL is still despite some rule changes, it's still a pretty physical league. We saw the Super Bowl. All right, who won the Super Bowl? The more physical team, which was Seattle. So he prepares these guys for the NFL.
The better line of
scrimmage, yeah, wins championships, yeah.
Wins.
So our offensive line, all those dudes look like they can start on Sundays. All those dudes, our defensive line, all those dudes look like they can start on Sunday. And that's the thing. So physicality wins out, and that's what he's doing. And quarterbacks benefit from that. So I mean, was Carson Beck Cam Moore? No, but Carson Beck did enough to get us to the national championship. And I know he wasn't great at times this year. I know the fan base got mad at him, but he made the right throws against Ohio State, against Ole Miss, that got us to the championship game, and he almost won us a national championship. I thought personally he got a little greedy towards the end there, but the bottom line is though, hey, he took a chance that didn't work out for him. But the bottom line is though is that you're right. The page needs to be turned with Mario. The clock management thing. Listen, that knee was his second year. He hasn't done it since. Get over it. All right. The Stanford thing that they all talk about when he was at Oregon, that could be debated because they were still going for a first down and he had one timeout, whatever it was. And the quarterback killer thing, he's had 2 top 10 quarterbacks in the first round as a coach. May have a third one if Mensa lives up to the hype, right, as well. That's it. Like Mario Cristobal prepares his teams like if they were going to the NFL. A strong line of scrimmage on both sides of the football, and everything else will figure itself out. I remember Deion Sanders, who I respect a lot. I know you do too. Say that he doesn't build from the inside out; he builds from the outside in. When I first heard that, I was like, "Ooh, that usually doesn't work out for him." It usually doesn't work out. Yeah. How's his luck been? Not very good, has it?
Not since that first year, bro.
Man.
Listen, I like the guy, right? Anybody who knows me and me and my brother, my brother's a huge Florida State fan. We had that conversation, where we've talked about, because he was this big proponent, of Deion and the whole deal, in terms of like, his coaching and his kind of all that. He was like, oh, they're going to fire Norvell and, bring him to FSU. I was like, bring him. Bring him. You don't scare me. Whatever. Right. But again, would he bring, that excitement? Yeah, I guess, especially now, given what they've got in Norvell and everything. But listen, you can't win with that mentality, at least not long-term, and not consistently. You don't win from the outside in. Do you need outside, talent? Yes, you do. But listen, It's been proven. Offensive line, defensive line, quarterback, cornerback. If you've got those 4, right, you have a chance. And Miami had offensive line. They had defensive line. They had quarterback and they have cornerback. And coming into next year, that doesn't change. They're going. They're the one position, and listen, of all the position groups on this team, the one that probably has the least proven talent is the offensive line. But with that being said, And with the coaches you've got there, it's a position group that I don't worry about, right? And the reason, and it's twofold. It's Mario Cristobal, it's Alex Mirabal, right? But then on top of that, their strategy in the portal tells me that they are comfortable with what they have in house. Look no further. I'm a firm believer in that if they were worried about that position room, then they would have been more active in the transfer portal. But the fact that they weren't tells me that they like what they have in the room and that they have enough to make a run with what it is they've got in the room. And again, I don't know if you push back on that, but there's no way that if they were not happy, that they lack for activity and bodies added to that room. I don't know if you push back on that, but that just tells me that they're comfortable with what they have in the building at that position.
Yeah, I know it's different, and I had this conversation with Brett De Gea last week. I know it's different, but the way I see this team, just on circumstance, I compare them to Mario's second year, when he had Tyler Van Dyke, for full season start. You had an inexperienced offensive line playing together, right? You had playing together. You had a freshman, Francis Mauigoa. You had Matt Lee as your center. And then, of course, you had some veterans on your side, but they hadn't really played together. And it's the second year of Mirabal system.
Yeah,
That
Jalen
team,
Rivers and
yeah,
all that
Jalen
stuff.
Rivers, yeah, that team honestly, Javion Cohen, that team honestly should have won 10 games, and it should have won 10 games. It wasn't for poor quarterback play. It wasn't the offensive line.
Tyler Van Dyke got the yips. He literally forgot how to throw the damn ball.
Yeah, no,
He was
and
seeing ghosts.
especially with zone defense. If you look at Tyler Mike's picks, most of them were a clean pocket. So it was guys dropping back that he didn't see, or guys jumping routes, stuff like that. That's pretty much where a lot of his picks were. If he doesn't throw those picks against Georgia Tech, against North Carolina, against NC State, in general, Miami doesn't lose those games. They have a 10-win season, and that's with like I said, a inexperienced offensive line playing as a unit. This season is kind of like the same thing, and that's why I wanted a Darren Mensah type. Because you have a quarterback that's a veteran that can navigate those waters and kind of bail his line out if he needs to, especially the fact that he can run as well. So it's gonna be. I still think that the Miami's roster or schedule, I'm sorry, um, lets us up to have a very successful season based upon the fact that you start off with a team that you should beat in Stanford. You get a couple cupcakes, and by the time you face Clemson, your team should already be cohesive enough to go over there and win a football game, and even go over there in Notre Dame and win a football game. So Miami schedule positions itself this way to win games because the fact the line will be used to playing with each other more. Not like this past year where you started with Notre Dame, then you played Florida, then you played Florida State, which are you can make a case for tougher opponents. But I think I'm not worried about this line at all. I think this line is going to be fine. Right, as well, we're confident in our coaching staff. Is it going to look a little different because you have a true freshman starting at right tackle? Absolutely. But Jackson Campbell's already in camp. Jackson Campbell's already blocking dudes. And I've heard good things about Jackson Campbell in practice. So to say the least, I'm not worried, especially with the coaching of this group as well. And I'm excited, I will say, to see how this line functions this season. I'm excited about the center battle as well, whether it's going to be Ryan Rodriguez, Max Buchanan, or SJ Lafayette.
Yeah, you just continue to go back to that position, man, and I think you kind of hit it on the head with with that particular team in Mario's second year, man. I mean, they were they weren't ballyhooed, right? They weren't celebrated by any stretch, right? But they were just a solid, they were just a solid unit, right? And again, what does that go back to? It goes back to coaching, right? It goes back to coaching. And when you look at, again, man, I'm just a firm believer. The lack of activity in the portal leads me to believe that they are extremely happy with this group, right? And now, do I think they're probably stronger in the interior right now, more proven, not even proven necessarily, but stronger in the interior, more talented in the interior than they are outside? I think so. I think, hence the play for Jordan Seaton, right? I think they were willing to pay a good bit of money for him. And I think that's more of a reflection on, again, what they have at tackle as opposed to what they have in the interior at guard. I think there's a lot of talent at guard. There's a lot of depth at guard. I think there's less proven talent, at the tackle position. And again, hence the play for Jordan Seaton. But again, I think that they are satisfied with what they have. I think they're comfortable going into camp with what it is they have, because again, I think at the end of the day, the coaching will in the system will allow this unit to play above its level of talent, above its experience, right? And I think that's kind of what they're counting on. And I think that that second year offensive line, is really a good comparison in terms of what we may see in 26. So man, look, I'm right there with you. When it comes to that. And listen, man, the last word I had in the notes that I made, man, was trajectory, right? And you look at where this team is at the end of year 4, right? If you guys remember, the plan, or not the plan, right, but the vision was always right. Because again, if you win before you're right, you're established plan, right? If you win early, then that's great. But the vision that Mario had was always like you're throwing up, right? Year 5. Year 5 was the vision, right? That was the forecast was, hey, listen, wait till year 5. And if it wasn't for a couple stupid, special teams plays, we would have, greatly exceeded that expectation in just year 4, right? And so, when you're looking at the trajectory of this program, right, you're looking at, the end of year 4, playing for a national title, right? You're looking at what they're doing in the transfer portal, being selective in the transfer portal. You're looking at what they're doing on the recruiting trail. You're looking at how they're developing guys, right? They've got 10 guys that are going to the NFL Combine. You're looking at more than 3 very likely first round picks, right? You're looking at a total of, I'm guessing, somewhere in the neighborhood. You're going to have at least 8 guys drafted, right? I would guess, right? I don't know that all 10 get drafted, but I would say minimum at like 8 guys get drafted.
Mm-hmm.
Trajectory, right? Trajectory. The needle is pointing upwards, with this program, right? You're looking at what you're retaining. And we spoke about the roster. We spoke about the position groups. You know what else you retained? What, like we talked about, before we got on the air? Coaches.
Mm-hmm.
You're retaining coaches. Who did you lose? You lose on offense. You lose Cody Woodhill, who goes home to Ole Miss. Cool, fine. I think we can make an argument that if there was one position coach that I would have been okay losing, it would have been the tight ends coach. If I'm being 100% honest, not out of convenience because he's not here. I would say it's because of the lack of development of anybody behind Elijah Arroyo, right? You can chalk that up to a couple different, reasons. Fine. You can make an argument one way or the other on why it is that tight end room really lacked the productivity that it did this year. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if you would have allowed me to change one guy on offense, it would have been Cody Woodhill, right? Hey, good luck. Go on and do great things at Ole Miss, right? You lose a guy like Matt Merritt who goes to the NFL. Can't be mad at that, right? But when you talk about retention, you look at this staff and who they're going to bring back, and hopefully they're taking their time with these running back hires, with his running back coach hire and the tight end coach hire, because they're going to bring in somebody really good. I have full trust in Mario Cristobal on that. But you look at the retention of players, but also the retention of coaches, right? You're bringing back your OC again, right? You're bringing back your DC again, and Corey Heatherman after his first year, and what that defense did after just 1 year, right? And so again, all this to me encompasses trajectory. All this is just contributes to this arrow, continuing, to point in the right direction. And, again, man, a program who you can't help but be excited about if you're a fan of this team. You're looking at, they're just continuously making the right moves, right? And hitting on all three things that you need to hit on in order to be successful. Again, you're looking at recruitment, which he's always been good at. You're looking at the development side of things. These guys that are going to get picked in the draft, the guys that are going to go in the first round, and then retention, keeping your guys in-house, right? Not losing anybody of any big consequence, retaining your coaches, and really being set up next year. When you look at the roster, when you look at the continuity on the coaching staff, when you're looking at the schedule, you really, really have to I don't want to get ahead of myself, and we'll talk about it in the next couple of episodes of the State of the Canes that we're doing. But you really, really quietly, you have to be very, very optimistic about what this team could look like in 2026.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you said everything very clearly, bro. Absolutely. Like I said, this team is primed to make a major run next season as well. With Mensah at quarterback, your running back room intact, bringing back Mark Fletcher is going to be huge. You have that veteran leadership in the locker room as well. The upgrade at the wide receiver position, and on defense as well. You're returning a lot of players at defensive backfield. I'm very excited to see the young guys like Jabari Antoine, Chris Ewald as well. And again, I think our offensive line is gonna be fine. I think it's gonna be fine, and I think this team is very capable of doing a lot of damage in the ACC.
Yeah, man, it's crazy, man. You sit there and again, you look at trajectory of this program, and you look at again, it's always fun to talk garbage about Florida State. They haven't had a top 10 recruiting class since 2017. Since 2017, they haven't had a top 10 recruiting class. I'm surprised they finished with what they did this year. I think they finished like 15th or 16th or something like that, which fairly impressive given how not great they were and how not great they've been for the last couple of years. Clemson, no top 10 recruiting class in the last 4 years, right? Essentially have checked out of the portal, by and large, right? They brought in like a couple guys, but they're spending no money in the portal, right? And so again, man, you have one program going this way, right? You have another couple programs, I don't know if they're in the death spiral just yet, but definitely not looking super optimistic when you're looking at some of those big names in the ACC is with Florida State and Clemson. So listen, man, for a lot of reasons, you look at the schedule and everything like that, manageable, very manageable. And so again, man, a lot of reasons to be excited for the offseason to end and for for this season to begin, man, and just see what they could do.
Yeah, I wish season started next week, man. That's
and again, man, we're gonna get into it. As this series goes along, man, we're gonna touch on the offense next. We'll talk about the defense. We'll talk about the schedule and everything like that, man. But again, if you're a Miami fan, you've got to be excited about what happened this year. It really does tell you. It gives you an insight on what this program has been, where you lose a national title. And, and we've all been around. We're old enough to be around for, to have been around for at least I know me personally, man, like they would lose a game and they would ruin my weekend. Right. I would hate life the rest of Saturday, all of Sunday, like I would hate life. Right. And you look at them, having lost a national title and really the next day you look at it and go, hey, I think we're back. I think we're in a good place, and it's wild. I never would have thought in my entire time in being a Canes fan that they could lose a national title, and it really wouldn't bother me that much.
Yeah.
But it tells you two things: where we've been and where we're going. I think those are two clear indicators. Like you look at where they've been. And the lack of any real success, right? With a couple years here, a couple years there, right? Obviously, it hasn't been right. I mean, it's not like they were losing records year after year or anything like that. But again, 7 wins here, 8 wins there, 9 wins there, right? Like not a lot of exactly, not a lot of sustained success. Not terrible teams, but not great teams. And then you look at all of a sudden they have this run, they go to play for a national title and they lose, and yes, is there disappointment? Yeah, because you want to win a national title. But I think people really see where this program is going, right? And I think that gives you, this kind of quiet, at least I know it does for me, man. It really does kind of give me this quiet confidence that I hope people continue to sleep on them. But when you're looking at this roster and when you're looking at what they've added to it and what is on the horizon, I'm not making predictions. All I'm saying is I'm excited where this program is going. I'm excited what this team looks like. I'm excited with the schedule, and soon we'll see if this excitement is warranted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so, I'm excited, man. Totally for the season.
So yeah, brother, we missed our boy Adrian Rainey from the Rainy Day podcast, man. Again, like I mentioned at the top of the show, he had a little family thing going on, nothing crazy or anything like that. But hope all that got worked out. For our boy Adrian, hopefully we'll have him on for part 2 of the State of the Canes talk. But I think that's all we got for you guys tonight, man. I think again, hope you guys tune in and join us as the series goes along, man. If you guys can do us a huge favor, like and subscribe to the shows. My boy Will on the 305 Sports Now podcast, Adrian with the Rainy Day podcast. All our people over at FTSN, Bobby Finstock and all the guys putting out content over there. We'll get back with you guys next week for part 2 of the State of the Canes talk. From my boy Will, who's playing a little injured today, a little under the weather. Appreciate him joining me. I am your boy Q, and we'll catch up with you guys next week, man. Everybody have a good night. Take care.
Thanks. Bye, guys.